Hi, welcome to Behind the White Coat. My name is Jean Gendreau, and I'm the host tonight, and our special guest is Jennifer Hollingsworth. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Jennifer is a technical staff member at Los Alamos National Laboratory in Materials, Physics, and Applications Division. And I guess that means you are a nanoscientist.
I am a nanoscientist. Actually, I'm a chemist. And
Okay.
I'm a chemist who makes very small things on the order of 10 to the negative 9 meters, which actually is the size of a nanometer. And so we're interested in understanding the properties that we can get when we make things very, very small in the nanosize regime, and also ultimately applying them for a variety of applications.
Okay, such as?
Such as energy harvesting, such as light emission, such as biology. In particular, we use some of our nanoparticles as optical probes. We can actually attach some of our nanoparticles that emit photons of light to a biological molecule, and in this way we can track the biological molecule through space and time by observing the light that it's emitting while it moves around in space. In terms of light emission on a larger scale, we use some of our so-called optical nanomaterials, i.e. our nanomaterials that emit light when excited either by some other photon or by electrically. We can use these collectively to generate light on a larger scale in the form of light-emitting diodes, so new types of lights for our homes and our businesses.
Okay. So why don't you talk about some of the current projects that you're working on right now?
Right. So as a chemist, we actually make stuff. So we're interested in synthesizing nanomaterials from the bottom up. And so we use chemical synthesis techniques to fabricate so-called quantum dots. These are simply nano-sized semiconductor particles that when you make, the important thing is when you make a semiconductor very, very small in the nano-sized regime, you can control some of its fundamental properties, such as the semiconductor band gap. And this allows us to tune the color that we can get out of the quantum dots. So I already mentioned, we're interested in nanomaterials that emit light. Ideally, we want to control the color of that light. And so by simply changing the size of our quantum dots, we can change the color of light that we get out of them when we excite them with, for example, a UV light source or a blue light source that you might have in a fluorescent light, for example.
Okay.
So quantum dots are some of the things we synthesize. We also make so-called quantum wires. Quantum wires is similar to their quantum dot counterparts, allow us to tune the semiconductor properties by, again, squeezing these semiconductors down to very, very small sizes into this nano-size regime. In the case of the wire, though, only its diameter is very, very small. In terms of length, for us, they're huge. They're microns in length, so 10 to the negative 6 meters. And so they almost are literally like a wire. You can envision them acting like a conduit for electrical charge, for example. So wires might be more relevant to light harvesting applications, for example. So they can take light from the sun, convert it to what we call electron hole pairs that then can be used to generate charge or electricity. So quantum dots, nanowires, these are the sorts of things that we synthesize in our chemistry lab. And what we do that's sort of novel is we tune the structure of these particles. And so in particular, in terms of the quantum dot, we don't just make semiconductors that are very, very tiny. We actually make semiconductors that are very complex, too. They have a core, they have a shell, they even can have multiple shells. And you can couple the semiconductor particle with a magnetic particle or a metal particle and further modify and change the properties for a whole slew of applications that weren't even envisioned a decade ago.
Wow, very interesting. Okay, we have a small audience here tonight, and I'm just wondering if they have any questions. They're feel free to
They're being shy.
to ask questions. Okay, all right.
So.
Tell us what like a typical day at work is like for you.
That's a loaded question this week, I'll tell you. So on a good day, I get to think about science, and I get to interact with my postdocs, and who actually get to do the work. So I rely very heavily on a set of very, very talented postdocs and actually currently students and technologists who actually do the work. You know, they're the ones who are hands-on in the laboratories, synthesizing the nanoparticles that we care about, doing some of the characterization, collaborating with some very talented physicists with whom I worked, who are spectroscopists, for example, who tell us about the optical properties, you know, that we're interested in. Are we making the right materials and so forth? Anyway, so these folks actually get to do the fun stuff. And on a good day, I get to interact with them, and we get to work out problems, science problems together, and that's really the most fun. You know, honestly though, on a regular basis, a lot of our time is taken up trying to find the funding to support the science that we do. And this is becoming, of course, more and more challenging with the recent budget constraints that are coming out of Washington, regrettably, in the area of science. So.
How many students work with you?
I have 2 students right now, and one of whom just got accepted to Cornell University as a graduate student. He's sort of middle career here, and so that's very exciting. And then I have a number of postdocs as well, and they're really great to work with.
So where does your funding come from?
The funding comes from a variety of sources. Currently, a lot from the LDRD funding, so the Los Alamos National Labs Laboratory Directed Research and Development, LDRD. And it's a fraction of our total NANL budget that gets funneled to support basic science research. And historically, it has been a great vehicle for, supplying the fundamental science that ultimately gets translated into the applied areas at the laboratory, and really is sort of the generator of new ideas and new capabilities that are very useful in the long run in the applied side. And so I'm very proud to have been part of this process over the years. And so LDRD, also DOE, so the Department of Energy, Basic Energy Sciences Office, or BES, funds our user facility, and which we may talk about tonight as well. But it also funds some core research projects. And in particular, I and my excellent collaborator, Han Toom, we work together on a solid-state lighting effort that is funded by DOE BES. And so that has been a vehicle as well for us to get some really cool basic science done that has an applied flavor with respect to lighting technologies. And also I have historically been funded by NIH, so the National Institutes of Health, and in terms of that molecular probe technology that I referred to earlier. So we were tasked, or we proposed to, and fortunately tasked, with the project, or with the idea of creating a better molecular probe, so a better optical tag for putting into a biological system to understand biological processes by being able to observe them, in terms of what light is given off. Actually, we should cack that. That doesn't make sense.
It's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, one challenge in the area of molecular probes for fundamental biosciences has been that a lot of the probes are either photo unstable, and so they'll photo bleach, they'll disappear on you, and so you can't track them for long periods of time. And also they tend to blink. So a lot of conventional quantum dots, when you photo excite them with a continuous source of light, such as a laser, will not give you a continuous stream of light or photons back. Instead, those particles will turn on and off in a random fashion. And so if you're trying to use that quantum dot as your probe and you're trying to track it through time and space and it's turning on and off on you, you're more likely to lose it. And so we developed a very a nice new type of quantum dot through this complexity that I mentioned earlier that we can obtain through synthesis that allows us to realize non-blinking behavior and non-photobleaching behavior. So very, very stable optical emitters. And so that was a nicely successful NIH effort. So, and historically, I've also been funded by the intelligence community, and that's been very interesting applied research. And we're also looking now towards the applied energy areas as well.
Is it you that has to write the grants, or?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So on a typical day, when I say get funding, I mean it's not only generating the ideas, but actually executing the proposals, and tracking down the right people who might be interested in those. We also occasionally get to work on patent applications. So some of the work we generate is patentable, and so we have several patents that have come out of some of the work we do. What else in a typical day? I don't know.
Sounds like plenty.
It's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, actually, I should point out a couple other things. So we do have an opportunity to serve sometimes on some interesting committees at the laboratory, one of which for which I serve as chair is the Directors Colloquium Committee. And so this is a really interesting a series that has been around for effectively decades. And behind it really is the principle that was initially espoused by Oppenheimer himself, that the laboratory scientists should, occasionally at least, get together as a group and interact, share ideas, and sort of foster this communication on a broad level. And so that general nugget of an idea has translated down through the decades and remains as the Directors Colloquium. And so I'm proud to be part of that process. And we bring in some very interesting speakers from around the country and around the world to speak about some exciting science and sometimes even non-science, non-technical talks as well. So,
interesting.
Yeah.
Talk about your user facility.
Yeah, so I am lucky enough to be a staff member, a technical staff member in the Center for Integrated Nanotechnologies, otherwise known as CINT, or CINT. CINT is one of the 5 DOE BES-funded nanoscale science research centers, so NSRCs. And CINT is unique among these 5 in that it is actually jointly operated by Sandia National Labs and Los Alamos National Lab. It also has 2 sites, so 2 buildings, the so-called Gateway, which is the building here in Los Alamos, and the core facility, which is located in Albuquerque. But anyway, it's kind of a fun experiment in bringing together Los Alamos scientists and Sandia scientists, and I think it's been a very successful experiment in that we really have developed some interesting Lanel-Sandia collaborations in all the areas that CINT is active. And briefly, there are 4 science thrusts that we tend to pursue at CINT. The one I'm mostly associated with is the nanophotonics and optical nanomaterials thrust, and a couple other thrusts as well. And anyway, so the CINT is an interesting facility to work in because we as CINT scientists are encouraged to develop collaborations with potential users, and our users can come from pretty much anywhere, from universities, industry, other national labs, even outside of the United States. I have currently collaborations with folks in Germany and Australia, for example. And so anyway, basically anybody can access through our CINT's proposal process the capabilities of our facilities, so the actual equipment, but generally, more typically what users are accessing is our expertise and our knowledge, and in my case, our materials. So, for example, a lot of folks are very interested in our so-called giant quantum dots that are ultra-stable and non-blinking and have other unusual properties. So I interact with folks all around the world who are interested in trying to either understand these materials better or to use them in some unique application. So it's very exciting opportunity for collaboration, and and really expanding the impact you can have by being here. Yeah.
Okay. So you got your degree in chemistry?
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry at a small liberal arts college in Iowa called Grinnell College. Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up from the audience. And I grew up in New Jersey, though. I should. Sorry, I have a feeling that there's an audience member who has an affiliation with New Jersey here. And so, anyway, right. So going to a small liberal arts college, oddly enough, allowed me a great opportunity to do science at an early stage in my career. And so I think that was a neat opportunity. Anyway, beyond that, I got my PhD in chemistry at Washington University in St. Louis, and then came to Los Alamos as a postdoc and have been here ever since.
And how long ago were you a postdoc here?
Started in December of 1999.
Okay.
So
Nice.
I'm going
Great.
to age myself or whatever. Date myself, I don't know.
And how did you get interested in science?
Yeah, I kind of expected that question, and I just don't know how to answer it. It's a hard question to answer. Honestly, I don't know. I frankly was broadly interested in all academic subjects as a child. I'm not sure when science popped out as the way to go. I do know I had very early on, the typical chemistry lab kits, and certainly was doing lots of experiments in our bathroom, occupying our only bathroom in the house, actually, with chemicals laid out all over the countertop. But anyway, I also, I was joking with my husband, I had a very charismatic 8th grade math teacher who took our class to Princeton University to attend a science lecture. It's sort of plasma physics or something. Who knows? I mean, none of us understood any of it. But I was certainly very impressed by the whole feel of the place and the seriousness of it, the depth of it. And I think that's probably what attracted me to science. Most. It was, it seemed to be an avenue where you could do serious work and that would have meaning. And so, although I admit I enjoy history and philosophy and art just as much in some respects, but if science felt like some place you could go and actually accomplish something that was real and could mean something to the world. So.
Were either of your parents scientists?
No.
No? No science in the family?
No. Really, no. My mom was a nurse, and my dad a history major who became a probation officer. I really, this is something I did on my own. I have an uncle who was a Yale-educated engineer, but it's not exactly the same thing. So. Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery.
And you have a family yourself, and how do you balance a career and your family?
That's the hardest question of all. It's a constant struggle, and I don't know if I or many of the folks I know who try to do the same thing are as successful as we'd like. We don't, and some days you balance fairly well, and other days you're tipped one way or the other, and I regret that, frankly. I sometimes think that I don't give enough, especially to my family.
How many children do you have?
I have 2 kids. I have 2 great kids. They're 8 and 10 years of age. Ursula is 10, and Harry is 8. And a great husband, Howard.
And do your kids show any interest in science at all?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if she'll pursue this, but my daughter just won the county science fair,
Nice.
physical sciences division for 5th graders and down. She's a 5th grader. And so that was pretty exciting. Currently, I think she's more interested in architecture and art, though, so we'll see. And Harry seems to be a philosopher, so I don't know. But they're both very curious, so I think that's at the heart of it. Anyway.
So you think you'll stay in this field, or do you have any interest in moving towards in other directions?
No, I've been rather adamant that I enjoy science. There are opportunities, of course, to always push into sort of management and that sort of area. But I still, at least at this stage, still really enjoy the exploration, discovery piece of it. I love telling stories. I should mention, that frankly, I mentioned I really enjoyed other topics as well beyond science, and I think that serves me well in the sciences. I've learned pretty well how to communicate, especially through writing, and to tell a story. And so whenever you do science and you're successful and you've generated some new interesting discovery or new material, you have to communicate that to your peers. And so that's actually one of the most fun things I get to do, is I love to write up the stories about the science. And and so whenever I get a chance to do that, that's probably the best thing.
Do you have any stories you want to share with us?
Uh-oh. On the spot. As I said, I like to write better than talk. So that's rather cruel.
Or tell us about one of your stories if you'd like.
Let's see. I don't know. I said the giant dot story is pretty darn cool. Where it's not often when you actually go after a particular function or end result and you actually get it. So we went after this non-blinking property in quantum dots, and we were the first to get it in an inorganic form. So others had done other things like take the nanoparticle and put organic molecules on the surface that would help to manipulate the optical response. But we were the first to do it by doing a core shell strategy. And that all-inorganic approach has turned out to be quite stable, robust, and reproducible. And hence is the reason these nanoparticles are particularly useful in biology and also in light emission in general for solid state lighting, for example. So it's really fun when the science translates to a reality that's useful. So.
Definitely. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we close?
I'd just like to encourage those of you who are interested in science or think you might be, not to be afraid. And if you may be sitting next to the kid in the class who looks like the quintessential science geek, and you may think that you're not, and that's okay, because the other things you bring to the plate, to the table, will serve you well, I think. And I think tenacity is a big part of being a scientist. I think critical thinking skills in general is key, and the ability to communicate. And so if you can wrap that together with a natural curiosity and a desire to just answer the question, why, how, you can be a scientist.
Great advice. And Jennifer, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks.
And thank you for watching Behind the White Coat.
Science.